I'd like to introduce our candidates. Democrat, Ed Rendell. Republican, Mike Fisher. Green, Michael Morrow. And Libertarian, Ken Krawchuk.
Good evening. Mr. Rendell, you've identified additional funding sources for education, but some voters believe the problems of public education go beyond spending more money. Many districts are top-heavy with administrators, and tenure can limit a good administrator's ability to root out bad teachers. How do you make public education more accountable?
Thank you. Mr. Krawchuk, you have 1 minute.
One thing you'll notice tonight is that we libertarians come at these sorts of questions from a much different perspective. All three of these gentlemen just answered that question the same way. They're going to do it their way. They have their agenda. I have a different plan. I would like to bring accountability back to our schools by injecting somebody who has been missing from the equation for too long: parents. Specifically, I would like to see parents have the ability to choose any government school for their child, and the funding which would have gone to their local school will follow the child to the school of the parent's choice. That way, good schools would grow and gain more funding, and the schools that are not so good would be put on notice by their falling enrollment that they better get their act together or they're going to be shut down. For the same educational dollar, we can get better education for our kids. And kids are the ones that this is all about, remember?
The Lehigh Valley has very specific needs from our leaders in Harrisburg. Our towns need to be able to regulate development and control sprawl, and at the same time, we need millions of transportation dollars to widen Route 22. What's your philosophy on balancing these conflicting needs, and will you fight for money to double the capacity of Route 22?
Mr. Krawchuk.
There are two parts to your answer, Jim. The first one is that the Pennsylvania Constitution says that all the gas tax money should go for the roads, and it doesn't. We should earmark that money for what the Constitution says it should. Second of all, when you send $1 to the government, whether it's federal funds or whatever it may be, part of that dollar right away is gone in the bureaucracy. And what comes down to the state is much smaller than what it was. And when the state takes its chunk, there's only a little bit left that comes to certain areas. And if you have a friend in the governor's office, maybe it goes to you, maybe it doesn't. What I would like to do is see those dollars kept locally so you can decide where that money's gone, not where these guys can decide where it's gone. And by the way, out of deference to Mr. Fisher's easily damaged sensibilities, I'm not tearing up dollar bills anymore. I'm using a 5. Thank you.
This is a theater. Ms. Portnoy? Ms. Portnoy, a question for Mr. Krawchuk.
Mr. Krawchuk, more than half the trash dumped in Northampton County's 3 landfills comes from out of state. Neighbors who live near landfills are tired of the noise, smell, aggravation, and fear of health problems associated with the dumps. Besides calling for more truck inspections and raising tipping fees, how can Pennsylvania limit trash imports and still comply with interstate commerce rulings?
As governor of Pennsylvania, this is my job description, the Constitution for Pennsylvania. There's also another job description, which is the Constitution for the United States of America. In this, it says the governor has no control over interstate commerce. This is something we've ceded to the federal government. So in terms of trash coming in from out of state, there's nothing that I'm allowed to do with it unless I violate my oath of office. But that's not saying there's nothing we can do about it. There are many things that we can do to help the environment here in Pennsylvania. Specifically, what I would like to see done is I would like to see pollution treated as a trespass. That means if someone's junk, someone's smoke, someone's acid rain, someone's pollution is leaking, blowing, whatever, onto your property, you can have that treated as a trespass. And all of the legal remedies which are available for trespass would be available for you to use against polluters, which would include court injunctions to shut them down, orders to clean them up, asset forfeiture to pay for that cleanup, locking them up if they don't get off your property. By using these different approaches, we can address most of the new pollution here in Pennsylvania. We could also change our laws to address some of the existing pollution. Right now, if I sold you my house and you went out in the backyard and dug in the backyard and found mercury or some kind of poisoning, do you know who'd be responsible to clean it up? Janet, you would, even though you knew that I was the polluter. We have to change our laws here in Pennsylvania so that the polluter is held liable, not the last person who happens to be in line. Also, we should stop trading the right to pollute. Do you know that you can purchase the right to pollute right now on the open market? These are the solutions that these people have given us. Why should anyone have the right to pollute? I would like to see these rights ended, and I think that the best way you can keep a clean environment is to vote Libertarian.
With more than 1 million hunters in Pennsylvania, the issue of gun control strikes a sensitive chord. Here in the Lehigh Valley alone, nearly 30,000 hunting licenses were sold last season. Do you support limiting gun purchases in any way? And would you support, through lawsuits or other means, holding gun makers responsible for the waves of gun violence that have washed across Pennsylvania's cities like ours?
Mr. Krawchuk, you have 1 minute to respond.
Suing the gun manufacturers is like suing General Motors if I run a red light. Ridiculous idea. I support the right to keep and bear arms more so than these three gentlemen do. There are so many reasons to prove that gun control kills. Whether you look at Florida, when they legalized concealed carry permits in 1987, their handgun homicide rate plummeted, and now it's at its lowest rate since 1933. Also, the case of Charlene Dunbar in western Pennsylvania just a few short weeks ago, where she shot her rapist. He said, "How would you like to be shot?" Well, he found out instead. If a woman resists an attacker, everybody knows she's twice as likely to get hurt. But if she resists with a handgun, she is half as likely to get hurt. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It only goes to prove that a handgun is a girl's best friend. Thank you.
The U.S. Supreme Court has given the green light on school vouchers. Some voters look at school choice as an opportunity to create competition among schools. Do you favor school vouchers or some form of school choice to give parents an alternative?
And choices by the parents, homeschooling, charter schooling, apprentice programs, community schooling. There are so many different options for schooling that we are not doing because we're doing it their way and not yours.
Mr. Flagg has a question for Mr. Krawchuk.
Mr. Krawchuk, one of the reasons this debate is being held in Easton is because so many people fought to preserve and restore the State Theater, and because of public funding from the state, Northampton County, and the city of Easton. But this theater and other facilities like it need help from Harrisburg. In an era of deficits and budget cuts, what approach will you take for funding for the arts? And by the way, if you tape that $5 bill back together again, you might consider donating it to the State Theater on the way out.
We need absolute quiet so we can hear this answer.
Jim, this is my job description. I've gone through this and through it, the Pennsylvania Constitution, over and over and over again. Nowhere in here do I see any authorization to give any money to the arts. In fact, if these gentlemen propose any kind of a solution in their rebuttal, which includes giving your money to this theater, they are in violation of their oath of office. I would not support violating my oath of office. And besides, even if we did spend state money on it, remember, most of that money vanishes into the bureaucracy. You don't want their help because this is all you'll get back from your dollar. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, Jim is correct. You should go out here and donate to the theater because that way what you think is important is what the money is going to get spent on. It's not going to become some political football to be decided by a couple of lawyer politicians. It's more important to keep the money locally. A question along the lines of, can you give me money to help Project X, whatever it is, that shows a dependence on government. And that's like a drug, because once it starts, you can't stop. Oh, just give me a little state money. Just give me a little federal money. Next thing you know, you're addicted. And the pusher starts pulling on the string saying, you've got to lower your blood alcohol level or else we're going to withhold the highway funds. You better let all the candidates into the debate or we're going to take away your funding. So many different... It's the same thing with the schools. He who has the gold makes the rules. You're going to put yourself in a bad situation where they're going to control things. If those dollars were retained locally, you'd have more money to keep in your pocket, more money for your theater, and less control by these lawyers. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Morrow, you have 1 minute.
I feel naked. I don't have any props.
Last week, members of the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation and Governor Mark Schweiker went to New York City to convince alumni of local colleges to return to the Lehigh Valley. Despite the reasonable cost of living here, some attendees said the Valley's meager job opportunities aren't enough incentive to come back. What sales pitch would you make to convince them to come home?
Mr. Krawchuk?
There they go again. Your life, their way. They have plans for the area, just like they had plans for the area when they put in Interstate 78. You know, I have roots in this area. I spent a good chunk of my childhood in Slatington. I was there for the centennial celebration back in 1964. Since then, the development here has been amazing. There are so many people here, it's getting crowded. And if they put in their plans to bring in more people, how many people want more people here? How many people want more traffic jams? Now, don't all raise your hands at once. What's the matter here? This is what happens when you take the power of government to influence one area over another. They're going to bring in more people, more traffic jams, more overcrowding, less open space. I'm the greenest guy up here. You know, backing up to the green thing, he's talking about moratoriums on landfills and limitations. We tried that about 5 or 6 years ago, and it drove the price through the roof. Abington Township banded together with their local communities, and we are in deep, deep debt because of their plans for moratoriums and limitations.
As mayor of Philadelphia, you signed off on legislation to give benefits to same-sex partners of city employees. In August, the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court struck down this legislation and called the laws, quote, a thinly veiled attempt by the city to duplicate the institution of marriage for couples of the same sex, end quote. Do you believe the state should recognize same-sex partners?
Mr. Krawchuk?
Thank you. As a libertarian, I believe you have the right to live your life your way without interference, provided only that you respect the rights and property of your neighbor. It's obvious where I stand on gay rights. Excuse me. Gays have no better home than the Libertarian Party because we believe that you have that right to live your life your way, not his way. I would like to see all reference to sex removed from the marriage laws, right on down the line, because I think what's good for the goose and the gander is good for the goose and the goose and the gander and the gander. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that everybody should be treated equally in the eyes of the law. So I'm not going to mandate to a company that you have to supply gay benefits or anything like that. It's up to the company to decide that, and it's up to you to decide how you're going to live your life, not Mr. Lawyer Fisher. Thank you.
I'm sorry, that was the goose and the... okay, I got it.
It used to be a gander, and the gander used to be a goose.
Mr. Krawchuk.
And a few others I'm sure I'm missing.
I couldn't keep up. I wasn't writing fast enough.
Your life, your way.
Mr. Krawchuk, Pennsylvania's population includes a large number of senior citizens. Few issues are more important to them than the cost of prescription drugs. How do you plan to expand the state's PACE and PACENet programs to cover more seniors, and what will it cost the state, and how will you pay for it?
You're asking the wrong guy. I go back to my Constitution for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Nowhere in here does it authorize the state to do anything at all about any medical benefit, any medical matter, or prescription drugs. Now, these gentlemen, if they look at it, I have a specially modified Constitution. It says they can do what they like. And that's what they've written into the Constitution. This is part of the reason why your taxes are so high. This is why taxes have been rising 3.5 times faster than inflation for the past 40 years, because they are trying to push these prices up. Let me tell you why seniors can't afford prescription drugs. How much do people pay in property tax? Arm and a leg, isn't it? Now, for them, to tax senior citizens like that. I'm for eliminating, not reforming or reducing. I'm in favor of eliminating the property tax. Because what these guys have done, they're like a doctor. The seniors are coming to the doctor saying, oh, please help set my broken leg. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the doctor who broke their leg in the first place. By their high taxes, by their ridiculously high unhumanitarian property tax, they've made it so that seniors can't afford to live in their homes, can't afford the drugs anymore. So what they want to do is they say, oh, they've caused a problem in the first place. Now they're saying, oh, come on back. I'll give you another program and another program. We libertarians believe in principles, not programs. Because the best thing we can do for our seniors is to stop taxing them out of their homes, leave more money in their pockets. There's also cheaper ways to do prescription drugs. Are you going to send that money to Harrisburg? This is what's going to come back to your grandma and grandpa. It's a bad deal. If we kept that money local, you could have 10 times as many people in your neighborhood. They caused the problem. Don't let them try and solve it. Thank you.
Mr. Morrow?
No props again.
This is a question submitted by one of our readers, Lillian Finesilver of Easton. What do you propose to do to protect Pennsylvanians against the threat of terrorism, which could increase dramatically if the United States goes to war against Iraq?
Mr. Krawchuk.
Finally, something that's in my job description. We libertarians believe that the purpose of government is to protect the rights and property of the citizens. And in no better way is that shown by defending us from foreign harm. I'm not going to argue foreign policy because that's a couple pay grades above the job that I'm looking for. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say what we're going to do here in Pennsylvania. Certainly we're going to rehearse PEMA. We're going to fortify all of these different organizations. But the best way that we can do it is to rely on you, my fellow citizen. We should respect our right to keep and bear arms and all of our constitutional rights because that's the best way to fight terrorism. What value in defending America if we surrender the values that define her? What I would like to see is that the right to bear arms not be questioned, including the right to bear arms on an airplane. As we were saying before, under the Commerce Clause, they only control when we cross the borders. Planes that start and end inside of Pennsylvania, I would honor your right to bear arms. I have more.
Ms. Portnoy.
Mr. Rendell, even though the legislature made changes this year to our open records law, requiring record keepers to respond to requests in writing with reasons for denying access, at least one national study still ranks Pennsylvania in the bottom half of the nation in access to government records. What steps would you take to strengthen the state's open records law, and what's so bad about shining the light of public scrutiny on the agencies that collect and spend our money?
Mr. Krawchuk.
What a great libertarian issue. Freedom of information. It's obvious where I would stand on this. I think that the government should open up all of its records. What I would like to see is that all of this be put on the internet, not just some of the open records that people are talking about. Certainly the government should react quickly, but I want to see Pennsylvania statutes in their entirety on the internet. I want to see all the modifying court cases, pardons for those who know what I'm talking about. I want to see all of that on the internet. For example, you could read a law and it says that we libertarians, we have 6 weeks to collect our signatures. Did you know that we need 10 times as many signatures? These guys needed 2,000. We needed 21,000. That's not fair. But if you read the law, it says that we have to collect those 21,000 in 6 weeks. You have to read the court case.
Mr. Krawchuk.
There they go again, spending your money on what they think is important. And Mr. Rendell is calling it investing. It's called taxing. It's called taking your money and spending it where they want to spend it. And Mr. Fisher says, I want lower taxes. Yeah, right. Who believes that? Cut me a break. The only person here you can trust to bring lower taxes is the Libertarian, Ken Krawchuk. What I want to do is I promise, I will veto every single tax increase. Pennsylvania government has been growing at 3.5 times the rate of inflation for almost 40 years, and I will end that trend. I will use a line item veto to get rid of all these shameful things like that 50% pension increase that the legislature just voted for themselves. I will also require that, I'll work to require that every single tax increase be approved by the voters. If we the people say no, it's no, because taxation without representation is tyranny. As I also said, I will work to eliminate the property tax. I will phase out the personal income tax. The only person you could trust to reduce taxes is a libertarian. Thank you.
Mr. Rendell, you can take a drink of water.
Good.
You can direct a question.
I'd like to direct this question to Ken. You know, Ken's a great guy, and he's been much fun, and I wish he was in all of the future debates. But, Ken, you talk about government programs, and you just bash government programs and bash government programs. How would you assess Social Security and Medicare? And can you sketch for us what the average poor, older citizen in Pennsylvania would be doing without those two government programs?
Thank you, Ed, and I appreciate the honor of the question. I don't bash programs. I bash illegal programs, unconstitutional programs. Because if a program is good, it will stand on its own. People will gladly contribute where things are important to them. 9/11 proved that in droves. Before then, people would say, oh yeah, people helping people? Tell a New Yorker. Today I say, yeah, tell it to a New Yorker. Because when it's important, people pull together. But the government has taken over so many of those functions, Ed, that people just don't think to do it. They say, oh, there's a government program to take care of the bum on the street. There's a government program like Social Security to take care of my grandmother. If the program is good, it would stand on its own. Now, the examples that you're giving there, again, Ed, there are a couple pay grades higher than the job we're all looking for, but I can answer Social Security. Because I don't know if you know, but I sought my party's vice presidential nomination in 2000. Social Security itself is a bad deal. First of all, there's the question of that dollar going to the federal government, and when it goes to the federal government, you get back even less of that dollar. If you go to the website, for example, at cato.org or socialsecurity.org, there's a calculator there that will show you what the difference is if you put your Social Security money in, say, some safe investment like bonds versus the negative real return that Social Security would give you. It shows that the average American would retire a millionaire. Where's the need there for this prescription drug program if you were a millionaire? What could you do for your grandkids if you had that $1 million? Do you know, a few years ago, my father passed away. Do you know what sort of a death benefit my mother received? $250. It's an insult. After my father worked all his life to contribute into Social Security, and then she's got this bum deal. She gets so much per month. Thank you.
Mr. Krawchuk, you can direct a question.
What an opportunity. Oh, man. I was going to ask Mr. Fisher a question, but I figured he'd flip-flop on it, just like he flip-flopped on having me included in these debates. So I figured we can't trust Mike Fisher. It's true. He flip-flopped. So instead, I'm going to agree with the other two gentlemen, and I'm going to ask Mr. Rendell my first question. Ed, we all know that there's only two people on this stage that have any chance of winning. You, because you bought the election, and the other person, because he represents the values of the people of Pennsylvania, and that's me. Can't trust Mr. Fisher. So my question is, you have repeatedly said that you would limit the purchase of guns to one a month. You would question somebody if they went in to buy a second gun a month. But the Pennsylvania Constitution says that the right to bear arms shall not be questioned. Now, if somehow you should manage to win, you're going to be swearing an oath to uphold this document. Mr. Rendell, I want to know which one you're going to betray, your oath to uphold the Constitution or your promise to the anti-gun lobby. And don't tell me neither, because you're no Bill Clinton.
I can't figure that last one out, but I'll try.
What does question mean?
I'll answer your question. You know, the interesting thing is that I think Mike gave the answer to this question earlier. Obviously, all of the rights guaranteed in the federal Constitution and the state Constitution are subject to reasonable limits. If any of you were just so taken by my performance in this debate that tomorrow night you went to a crowded movie theater and in the middle of the movie you stood up and started waxing eloquent about why Ed Rendell should be governor at the top of your lungs, they'd cart you right out of there, even though political speech is the most protected of all speech, because there are reasonable limitations on all of the rights guaranteed in our Constitution. And Mike said it very, very well. Nobody would, again, even perhaps the NRA and Charlton Heston and Wayne LaPierre would say that the Second Amendment gives you the right to have a nuclear device or have a surface-to-air missile that you can fire through a surface-to-air missile gun to bring down airplanes. Of course not. There are reasonable limitations. 1 gun a month. Virginia and South Carolina, 2 states with tremendous gun heritage, have passed those laws. They are reasonable limitations. It means that if you are a law-abiding citizen, you can buy, first of all, it only applies to handguns. Secondly, it means if you're a reasonable citizen, you can buy 12 a year. If you're married, you can buy 24 a year. Good grief. Good grief. How much more do we need? But it cuts out gun traffickers. It cuts out that guy who goes into stores everywhere in Pennsylvania and buys 12 9mm semi-automatic Beretta pistol, and we all know he's going to sell them in the streets to criminals who will use those guns not to hunt, but to maim and to rob and to kill.
Mr. Krawchuk?
My question?
Yes, you can ask a question.
All right. First of all, I applaud the Express Times because finally we have a real debate. We get to ask real questions one-on-one. And my second question is about the debates. Do you know that I'm going to be shut out of most of the rest of the debates? Did you? Do you know, I'm going to be shut out of the debates by several partisan agencies who are masquerading as nonpartisan agencies, such as the League of Women Voters, Pennsylvania Economy League, and others. Mr. Rendell shows his support for that exclusion by agreeing to be a part of those forums. Mr. Fisher goes a step farther by actually calling for me to be removed from these forums. So my question is, what are they afraid of? Why are they trying to exclude me? And the person that I want to answer this question is the Libertarian candidate for governor of Pennsylvania, Ken Krawchuk. The reason why they don't want me in this debate, or any of these debates, is because I am jeopardizing their monopoly on power. And the last thing that a monopoly wants is a choice. And I am the only person up here who represents that true choice for Pennsylvania. I'm the only one who is challenging that monopoly. Right now, 2/3 of the people don't vote. 1/3 of them do. Those 2/3 of you who don't vote, you're being taxed to support the special interests who are electing these two guys. The 1/3 who do vote, they're voting for these guys. What you've got to do is you've got to withdraw that support. These people have openly said they're going to violate their oath of office. Mr. Rendell, you said it. He chose. He's not going to betray his anti-gun people. He's going to betray the other ones. So if you want to do something, go to my website, www.kenk.org. Find there the address of the League of Women Voters, Pennsylvania Economy League. Tell them you want to have other voices. I thought I had 2 minutes to answer.
You did. That was 2 minutes.
Go to my website. Tell them you're mad as hell and you're not going to take it anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Krawchuk.
Thank you.
Mr. Krawchuk, I booked the acts here at the State Theater. You can give me your resume before you leave tonight, I think. Mr. Fisher.
KenK.org.
I mean, we should all get a chance to answer that one.
Well, you'll have 2 minutes at the end of the debate to give your statement. Mr. Fisher, you may direct a question.
Well, there's no better place to have Ken than right here at the State Theater, so...
It is now time for closing remarks. Each candidate is given 2 minutes for a closing statement, focusing on why the voters should elect him to the job of governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we start with Mr. Krawchuk.
In 16 days, Pennsylvanians will have an opportunity to make a change for the better. While there may be 4 candidates running for governor, as tonight is so amply shown, there are only 2 choices. Your life their way, or your life your way. Pennsylvania politics has now reached the point where anything can be bought. And you have to decide for yourselves whether you're ready to change that. We can and we must change that. We must change that because the policies of these two old parties have alienated 2/3 of all of the voters, such that only 1/3 currently vote. That's a travesty. But that apathy can be turned in our favor, because this year we can elect the Libertarian by attracting the vote of only 1 out of 8 voting age Pennsylvanians. 1 out of 8 is all it takes. That's less than what won the American Revolution. Tell your friends there's a choice this year, a real choice. Not more of the same old, your life, their way. Tell them to tell their friends. Have them visit my website at www.kenk.org. Tell them there's somebody who's not going to betray their oath to uphold the Constitution. Let them know there's a choice this year. When they go into that voting booth and pull that curtain closed, they're not a Republican. They're not a Democrat. They're a taxpayer. And who do you trust to hold the line on taxes? So vote for me, Ken Krawchuk, Libertarian for governor. Because if you keep on voting the way you've been voting, you're going to keep on getting just what you've been getting. And I don't know about you, but I have had enough. Thank you.